Welcome back to Newsmaker Live. Thank you very much for staying tuned. I'm speaking here with the Director of Corrections, Mr. Hilary Herman. Of course, it's always a pleasure to have him with us discussing matters related to corrections. And of course, they're important because we see the level of lawlessness on the island. And when people get on the wrong side of the law, then they end up in your hands directly. But it's a different situation where you have people who are in your employ and you supervise get on the wrong side of the law, and that was a situation for your industry's manager who was in the news earlier this week. I think it was wrongful or misappropriation of assets or that kind of thing. I can't remember exactly the term that was used or the charge that was brought against her. This is somebody with whom you work, somebody you supervise, and I'm sure that notwithstanding the alleged crime that was committed, there is some association that you'd have made with that individual that would cause you to shake your head, to wonder what went wrong along the way. First of all, what was the situation that caused her to be arrested?
Well, it's obviously an ongoing investigation, and I won't try to second guess it. I like to state that I think she's obviously innocent until she's proven guilty in a court of law. It was an audit was conducted. It was part of an ongoing investigation, and I have not seen the actual charges. You just mentioned, I think it was something aiding and abetting. I have not seen the charges, so I cannot really talk about it. But it's an ongoing investigation, as you say, and until she goes to court, until I actually see a report of the audit, I really cannot elaborate on it.
But I mean, an investigation will not just take place if there were no evidence to suggest that whatever is alleged happened. Probably she might not be found guilty, but as her supervisor, what are your feelings on the fact that people who are in your employ get on the wrong side and have to be arrested for misdeeds?
Well, it's always unfortunate. It's always unfortunate where you have whether it's a manager or a correctional officer does anything that creates suspicion of having broken the law, and obviously we don't condone any of it, and we expect that the law take effect. If there's anything that the evidence is there for conviction, please go ahead, and we'll assist in providing all the information that's required to effect the arrest. We have no issues with it. We hope that the law just takes its course.
And that investigation, was that something prompted by the bodily administration, or is it something that was outside of your purview?
It was prompted partially by us. There was some things there was some indicators that stood out there that we needed to get clarified.
And in a situation like that, if one of your officers, if one of your employees is to end up on the wrong side of the law and perchance find himself or herself behind bars at bodily correctional facility, what kind of provisions are made for these individuals, knowing that they're facing people that they supervise, people that they had responsibility over?
Well, I think you've known over the years we've had several cases of such, and we've had correctional officers, we've had police officers, we had customs officers, we had fire officers that were sentenced to serve time at our facility, and we, like any other inmate, we take care of them. If they need protection, we'll protect them. If they don't, then we become general population, and we treat them as well as we do any other inmate.
But there's not been any issue, for example, with former police officers or correctional officers and the inmates saying, okay, well, this person, was an officer, and let's do something with him.
No, we've not had any issues of that. As you know, I mean, we're a small community. Most of our staff have relatives who are inmates, and they seem to. We have no issues. We've never had any issues in 10 years that we've existed. We just have not had, and we've had, like I mentioned, corrections officers, police officers, and customs officers in custody.
We'll go to the phone lines in a little while, so we'll put the number up. But before we get to the phones, let's talk a little bit more about the positive things that are happening at Bodley. CXC, or CSEC, that's the
Yes.
correct name for it, just ended.
Yes.
And over the years, inmates at the Bodley Correctional Facility have been writing those exams and have been doing very well. What about this year? What has been going on this year as far as inmates registering and writing?
Well, this year, as any other year, we've had inmates who we're actually waiting results. But I must tell you, although we're proud of the inmates who do the CXC, and we give credit to our education manager, Mr. Constantine, for that program. He gets full credit for that. It's his program. He's taken it and run with it. But I think what I'm most proud of is the inmates that are coming to us with couldn't read and write. I think as good as the CXC programs are, the inmates that leave our facility having completed basic numeracy and they can now leave the facility able to write the names, able to write a letter home. Those are the inmates I'm really, and those numbers are actually bigger than we have the CXC program, and that's really the group that I really I'm proud of, because some of these guys just didn't know which end of the pencil to hold when they came in, and they're actually leaving our facility writing their names, and that's a much bigger program.
And what percentage of inmates coming in do you find that who are illiterate or functionally illiterate?
A good percentage. I couldn't tell you right off the top, but it's a good percentage, particularly from the rural areas.
And you have a large number of those, or do you pick inmates to go through the course of training?
Well, first of all, we select them based on their own willingness, their own motivation. That's how we basically do it. You teach people who want to learn, and because we have very limited resources, we only have 4 remedial teachers, so we cannot bring all 500 inmates into the education program. So we have to select the ones who do, and their motivation, their willingness to learn is one of the key factors.
You also have other programs going on. I remember being at the institution sometime last year, where you had this open house, you had this exhibition. A lot of fantastic talent exhibited. Inmates, obviously they cannot harness those talents as much as they would like to, because of the nature of a correctional facility. But what kinds of provisions are you making for those people who display exceptional talent and who show that they have the aptitude to be different, to do something positive, to go out into society after they have been released and make a way for themselves?
One of the things we try to do is identify the inmate's strengths and weaknesses. When they come in, we try to develop this sentence plan, and what will this inmate do through the time that he's in with us. And we identify his strengths and try to build on those strengths, and the weaknesses we try to help them get over them. And when we identify it, for example, as you said, some of the talents you saw, some of the artwork, and we had some of that presented at our conference this year, where we had some inmates singing some songs, and we had a skit done by some inmates, and that was very well received. Just part of the talent that's there.
And I'm sure that the correctional officers or the superintendents and directors from around the region would have cited that in their own correctional facilities as well. Is there, what kind of exchanges do you have? I mean, I'm sure that you learn certain things. What have you learned from your colleagues?
Well, there's always, there's always things we learn from each other. There's just the networking. There are simple things that the other directors or other prison commissioners have, different practices, different procedures they use, and how do we do an intake? How do we process an inmate? These things that we overlook. And by talking, you find out that that there's a better way of doing things. One of the benefits to us hosting the conference, we have a visit by all the directors, and they will go walk in with a critical eye. Now, I work at the facility. There are things that I will not see. Then there's another prison director or commissioner walks through, and he sees it. He sees something, and he says, "Hey, Mr. Herman, that you need to change that." And it is something that I see every day. I may not necessarily see the limitations or the dangers in it being there. And they would walk through and say, "Hey, that's a security risk. I used to have that. I had to change it. This is what can happen. They will flush this down the toilet. That will break your, that's what it's all about." So we get to exchange those kind of ideas and better our operation.
Now, do you see, in your experience during the conference, did they cite a number of things, very many things that were of concern or could be a concern to you as a director, or was it very few things? There
was very few things. There were observations, things you can do better. There's nothing that actually stood out as a major issue, but there were some suggestions how I could move things along, how I could create new spaces and those kind of things.
The facility was locked down for a while. Is it still locked down following that raid and the escape of the Venezuelans and one St. Lucian inmate? Is it still in?
No, we have pretty much gone back to normal in some units. Of course, the maximum security unit is still 23-hour lockdown, but which is pretty much the norm across our region.
Right.
When we went back to full visitation, we pretty much we went a gradual step, given more visitation. So we were pretty much back to normal.
Okay. Well, our lines are open right now. If you have questions for Mr. Hilary Herman, he is the Director of Corrections on St. Lucia. Of course, a number of things to discuss with him and a number of questions I'm sure that you'd want to ask of him. You can call into the program. The number is now on your screen. You have been in this job for a little while now, and before I get to that, let's take this first call. Good evening, caller. Please go ahead with your question.
Everyone. Good night, brothers.
Good night.
What I would like to ask is that I'd like to know how many inmates occupy one cell. I'll listen on the offer.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot for that question. Before I have Mr. Herman answer that question, we'll take a quick break on the program. When we come back, we'll continue to take your calls, and he will answer that question about the number of inmates occupying one cell. Stay with us.